The morning sun gleamed over Boston's most prestigious luxury dealership. Bentleys, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. The kind of place where millionaires walked in with black cards and dreams were wrapped in carbon fiber. But today, something was different. The automatic glass doors slid open, and in walked a girl. 17. Worn sneakers. Faded school uniform. Natural curls brushing her shoulders. She didn't say a word. Her eyes scanned the room and landed, dead center, on the Lamborghini Aventador SEJ Roadster. Fiery red. Limited edition. Nearly $600,000. She stepped closer, mesmerized. That's when the smirk started. Blake Thompson, the dealership's senior sales manager, raised an eyebrow. His gaze slithered over her like she didn't belong. His voice, dipped in mock politeness, slashed through the silence. "Excuse me," he said. "You might have wandered into the wrong place. These cars are for real buyers, not school tours." A few employees chuckled. Customers turned, curious. The girl's cheeks flushed with quiet shame. But she didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply turned around and walked out. No words. No drama. Just silence and dignity. The next morning, the same dealership buzzed like usual. Engines purred. Suits shuffled. Salesmen circled like sharks. And then, brakes screeched. A Rolls Royce Phantom pulled up, black as night, sleek as a whisper. The license plate read Alexis 01. Doors opened. First came a suited man with an earpiece. Then a woman in sunglasses with a briefcase. And finally, her. Alexis Carter. But not in sneakers. She stepped out wearing a tailored gray suit. Sharp, clean, commanding. Her natural curls pinned back. Her gaze, steely and unflinching. Every head turned. Silence blanketed the room. She walked through the glass doors. This time, the automatic sensor seemed to move slower, as if even the building now understood who she was. She didn't look at anyone. She walked straight to the same red Lamborghini. Paused. Then said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'll take it. Cash. Today." The manager choked on his espresso. Wait, you're serious?" Alexis turned, eyes calm, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "My father turns 50 today. He's the reason I built Carter Robotics. The reason we went from a basement startup to Forbes 30 under 30. This car is his gift." Gasps. Stunned silence. One of the receptionists covered her mouth. The same employees who laughed yesterday now scrambled, desperate to assist. Blake stood frozen, humiliated, exposed. Yesterday, he saw a girl in sneakers. Today, he saw a CO. She signed the paperwork in under 20 minutes. No financing. No negotiation. Just quiet confidence and a platinum card that didn't blink. As she walked back toward the exit, keys in hand, she passed Blake one last time. She didn't insult him. Didn't scold him. She just looked him in the eye and said one sentence. "Next time, judge less. You never know who you're looking at." Then she opened the door, stepped into the red Lamborghini, and roared out of the dealership. The engine sang like justice. And the girl they laughed at became the legend no one would ever forget. Alexis didn't flinch. Not even as the quiet snickers behind her bled into the room like poison. She kept her back straight, her expression calm. Not because she didn't feel the sting, but because she had learned long ago never to let small mind shake big purpose. She turned again toward the gleaming red machine, the Aventador SEJ Roadster. Its sleek curves mirrored the fire in her heart. This wasn't just a car. This was a message. A gift. A legacy. A few feet behind her, Blake leaned in to his colleague, voice thick with contempt, barely hiding his smugness. Take a look, Peter. Since when did our showroom become a playground for schoolgirls? Peter, older but no wiser, followed his gaze and smirked. Probably another Instagram stunt. Maybe she wants to pose for her prom pic before security walks her out. Their chuckles, though low, echoed like slaps in the marble-tiled room. Alexis heard every word. She didn't need to look at them. The air reeked of arrogance. She could feel the weight of every judging stare. Too young, too black, too plain. But they didn't know what she knew. They didn't know that Marcus Carter, her father, had just been named on the cover of Forbes for building the most successful renewable energy tech firm in North America. They didn't know that she co-designed her own AI learning app at 14. Or that the very Rolex on her wrist, hidden under the sleeve of her school blazer, was a gift from Apple's executive board. What they saw was a girl. But what stood before them was legacy, grit, brilliance, and a daughter on a mission. Alexis ran a gentle hand along the Aventador's edge. In her mind, she pictured her father's face, lighting up at the sight of the roaring machine. He had always loved Lamborghinis, ever since he sold his first software prototype at 26 and bought a die-cast model of one because he couldn't yet afford the real thing. It still sat on his desk, 24 years later. This would be the moment she gave it back to him. Not just the dream, but the real thing. She turned. Blake was still watching, arms crossed, his smirk unwavering. "Sir," she said softly, but with conviction, "would you kindly show me the performance specs of this model? I'd like to know more about it before finalizing my decision." It was a dagger wrapped in grace. The audacity of certainty in her voice disrupted Blake's facade for just a moment. Well, he stammered slightly, the confidence in his voice fracturing. "I told you already, this isn't available to, look, maybe you should check out one of our more affordable." But he didn't finish. Because outside, the low purr of an approaching engine silenced the room. A blacked-out Maybach S680 rolled to a stop directly in front of the glass doors. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the rear door. Out stepped a tall, sharply dressed man in a navy suit, dark sunglasses, and presence that silenced every breath in the room. Marcus Carter. Every employee froze. Phones were lowered. Conversations died mid-sentence. The man, the billionaire, the legend, was walking straight into their dealership. Blake's face drained of color. He glanced at Alexis, then at Marcus, then back again. "Wait, no! That's no way!" Alexis smiled, just a little. Marcus walked past Blake without a glance. Straight to his daughter. He placed a hand on her shoulder, proud and warm. "You ready, kiddo?" he asked. She nodded, then turned to Blake. "We'll take this one. And we'd like it delivered by tonight." Blake's lips parted, but no words came. Marcus finally looked at him. Calm. Polite. Lethal. "You must be the one who made my daughter feel small." Blake swallowed. Marcus leaned slightly closer. "Bad idea." And with that, he turned back to Alexis. Together, they walked to the desk. Paperwork was drawn. The full amount was transferred. No credit checks. No discussion. Outside, as the sun began to set, the dealership staff gathered silently, watching the red Lamborghini roll away behind the Maybach. And inside it, a father beaming with pride, and a daughter who'd never once needed to raise her voice to prove her worth. Needs. The room went dead silent. The words hung in the air like smoke, visible, choking, undeniable. Some customers chuckled behind designer sunglasses. Others glanced away, awkwardly, unsure of where this was going, but too entertained to stop watching. Employees stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. But Alexis didn't blink. She stood in the middle of that marble floor, her posture tall, her chin lifted, her fists quietly clenched at her sides. Every ounce of her father's teachings flowed through her veins like steel. Dignity, grace, truth, never folding under pressure. She could feel the humiliation pulsing under her skin, but she didn't let it show. Not yet. Blake took one last step forward, towering above her, the fake politeness completely gone now. Just smugness. Entitlement. Disrespect.
"Now,"
he said coldly.
"I won't ask again. Please leave."
Alexis slowly nodded once, but not in defeat. In resolve. She turned, not toward the exit, but toward her phone. Without saying a word, she tapped her screen once. A call rang. 3 rings. Then a voice answered on speaker. "Hey, sweetheart.
"Everything okay?"
Marcus Carter. Every head snapped toward the girl. Alexis spoke clearly, calmly, loud enough for all to hear.
"Hey, Dad. I'm at Boston Luxury Motors. I came early like we planned. But the sales manager here says I'm not welcome, that I should try a budget dealership instead."
There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice returned. Slow, calm, powerful.
"Is that right?"
A moment later, tires screeched. Outside, the deep black Maybach S680 came to a stop. Doors flew open. A man stepped out, tall, commanding, dressed in a midnight blue suit. He didn't walk, he strode. With presence. With history. With every ounce of respect a man like Blake had never earned and would never understand. Marcus Carter. The room parted like the Red Sea. He entered the showroom without a single glance at the cars. Only one focus. Alexis. He walked straight to her, placed a firm hand on her shoulder, then turned his gaze, cold and immovable, on Blake.
"You're the one,"
Marcus said quietly,
"who mocked my daughter."
Blake opened his mouth. Tried to speak. Failed. Marcus stepped closer.
"You looked at her skin, her shoes, her uniform, and you decided she couldn't possibly belong here."
No response.
"You insulted her, tried to humiliate her. In your own arrogance, you forgot the only thing that matters in business."
Marcus leaned in.
"You never know who you're standing in front of."
Silence. No one moved. Then Marcus turned to the nearest employee.
"I'll take the Aventador SEJ Roadster. My daughter's already chosen it." "Why, yes, sir,"
the man stammered.
"Oh, and one more thing,"
Marcus added, his voice calm but sharp.
"Make sure the receipt goes under her name."
He looked back at Alexis.
"This is your gift, Lex. You earned it."
That's when the silence cracked. A customer clapped once. Then twice. Then everyone in the room was applauding, not for the car, not for the money, for her. Alexis Carter, who stood tall when it counted, who taught the whole room what true class looked like. And as the red Lamborghini was driven out of the showroom later that day, the manager who had sneered at her stood frozen in shame, watching everything he thought he knew get shattered in front of him. And Alexis? She didn't smile. She just looked back once, then forward again. Because some victories don't need words. They just need grace. And truth. And a Lamborghini wrapped in love always shines from within. Marcus's voice was calm, steady, anchored by years of facing storms far worse, but never forgetting who he was. He cupped Alexis's face gently in his hands, grounding her with the quiet strength only a father can offer.
"You carry our legacy,"
he said.
"And legacy isn't built in showrooms or bank accounts. It's built in how we respond when they try to break us."
Alexis nodded slowly, tears still clinging to her lashes, but the storm in her chest began to settle. In her father's gaze, she didn't just find comfort, she found mission. A reason. Marcus rose from the couch, walked to the nearby table, and picked up a leather-bound notebook. It was old, worn at the edges, filled with the scribbles and blueprints of the empire he had built from scratch. He held it out to her. "This," he said, "is where your journey begins. Tomorrow, we rewrite the story. Not just for you, but for every girl they ever laughed at, every child they ever doubted, every black soul they ever underestimated."
The next morning, the sun hadn't fully risen when a fleet of black luxury vehicles pulled up in front of Boston Luxury Motors. Doors opened, and out stepped Marcus Carter, flanked by legal counsel, media representatives, and 2 trusted board members of the Carter Tech Foundation. But at the center of it all was Alexis, no longer dressed in a worn school uniform, but in a tailored suit that fit her not just in size, but in purpose. She walked into the showroom with calm, commanding grace. This time, the staff didn't laugh. They stared. Blake Thompson, sipping coffee behind the front desk, choked as recognition dawned in his eyes. He stepped forward, unsure whether to smile, run, or apologize. But it was too late. Alexis walked directly to the Aventador SEJ Roadster, the same one she had admired just days earlier. She turned to the stunned staff. "This," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "is no longer a showroom of exclusion. Today, it becomes a lesson in humility." Marcus stood behind her, arms folded, letting his daughter lead. "My father will be purchasing this vehicle, but it won't be in his name. It'll be mine." Silence gripped the room. Then she turned to Blake. "And Mr. Thompson, you'll be delivering it personally. Not to this address." She handed him a card. "But to the community center my family just funded, built in the same neighborhood you said I didn't belong to. So every kid who ever dreamed big will know they're not alone." Blake couldn't speak, but the world would. Because the moment went viral within hours, photos, video clips, 1,000 retweets a minute. Headlines read, "Teen outsmarts discrimination. Buys $600,000 supercar after dealer mocks her. Daughter of billionaire tech mogul turns humiliation into power move. Alexis Carter sparks national conversation on bias in high-end retail." And through it all, Alexis never gloated. She smiled, but not out of vengeance. Out of justice. Out of grace. Out of the knowledge that her pain had planted something far greater than revenge. It had sparked change. And the girl who walked in with worn shoes now walked out, head high, purpose clear, legacy unfolding beneath her very feet. Stillness, the kind of stare that didn't just judge, but weighed a man's soul. "A misunderstanding?" Marcus repeated quietly. "Tell me, Mr. Thompson, was it a misunderstanding when you told my daughter to leave? When you laughed with your colleagues while she stood alone, humiliated, and still treated you with more grace than you deserved?" Blake opened his mouth, but nothing came. The silence pressed in heavier now, thick like a storm cloud about to burst. Marcus turned slightly, gesturing toward the glass doors. "Bring her in." The showroom doors parted. And there she was. Alexis Carter. Still in her uniform. Still in her sneakers. But something had shifted. Her walk had a quiet strength, her gaze unshaken, unashamed. As she stepped beside her father, every eye in the dealership turned, not in mockery, not in judgment. In silence. In recognition. She wasn't just the girl they dismissed yesterday. She was the daughter of Marcus Carter. But more than that, she was right. Marcus spoke again, voice low but absolute. "I came here today not for an apology," he said, locking eyes with Richard Mason. "Because an apology means nothing without accountability." He reached into his coat pocket and handed Richard a formal letter, emblazoned with the seal of Carter Group Legal. "That's a cease and desist regarding any footage taken of my daughter without consent. That's also notice that I've made formal complaints to the Massachusetts Office of Civil Rights. And that's not all." Richard, sweating now, flipped through the pages.
His hand shook.
In the coming days, Marcus continued, I'll be funding the launch of a new program across this city. Judged by Character, a training initiative focused on unconscious bias, customer dignity, and professional accountability. For every luxury dealership, every financial institution, and every retail space that has failed our community.
He paused.
And the first dealership I've selected to sponsor that program, free of charge, is yours.
Richard looked as though he might faint. Blake? He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Then Alexis stepped forward. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled the space with a quiet, grounded strength.
I don't need you to say sorry, Mr. Thompson,
she said, looking Blake in the eyes.
Because your actions already told me who you are. But maybe, after this, you'll think twice before treating another kid like they're worthless.
She glanced around the room.
And maybe everyone here will remember what my father always taught me.
She looked at Marcus, then turned back to Blake.
That real wealth lies not in the car you sell, but in the character you carry.
With that, Alexis turned and walked toward the exit. Marcus followed. Neither of them looked back. Outside, the morning sun cast golden light across the pavement. The black Phantom shimmered in silence. As the door shut and the engine rumbled to life, the entire showroom stood still, chilled not by anger, but by the undeniable truth that had just passed through their glass walls. They hadn't just lost a sale. They had been given a mirror. And what they saw was the cost of judgment and the power of dignity. Nodded slowly, his pride dissolving beneath the weight of Marcus Carter's resolve.
I understand,
he said quietly.
We'll comply with your conditions.
Blake, however, stood motionless, his lips quivering with disbelief. For years, he had navigated the world with a shield of polished arrogance, convincing himself that wealth and status excused his every action. But now, that illusion had shattered. His mouth opened again, perhaps to protest, but one look at Marcus's eyes silenced him. Not out of fear, but out of realization. A mirror had been held up to him, and what stared back was not strength, but cowardice. Marcus stepped back, his presence still towering.
You both have a choice, he said. Learn and change, or be remembered as relics of a world that is fading fast.
He turned to Alexis, who now stood calmly beside him. She hadn't said a word, but the quiet dignity in her posture spoke volumes. She wasn't there for revenge. She wasn't there to humiliate anyone. She was there to witness justice, and to show the world how power truly looked. Outside, the sun had risen higher in the sky. It cast golden rays through the glass walls of Boston Luxury Motors, illuminating the very place where, just a day ago, prejudice had stood tall and proud. Now, that same light exposed it, undressed it, defeated it. And as Marcus and Alexis Carter stepped into the waiting Phantom, the doors closing gently behind them, no one in that room dared to speak. Because some moments don't need applause. Some moments are silent revolutions. And this was one of them. What happens when a luxury car salesman humiliates a teenage girl, only to realize he just insulted the daughter of a billionaire? Let me tell you one of the wildest stories you'll ever hear. A 17-year-old girl named Alexis Carter walked into a luxury dealership wearing nothing but her old-school uniform and worn-out sneakers. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She just wanted to admire the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster, a backlash $600,000 beast of a car. But then it happened. Blake Thompson, the top salesman there, looked her up and down and laughed.
Sorry,
he smirked.
You're in the wrong place. These cars are for people who can actually afford them.
The staff chuckled. Customers stared. And Alexis? She walked out, silent, dignified. And she didn't say a single word. Until the next morning. Boom. A Rolls Royce Phantom pulled up. Doors opened. And out stepped Marcus Carter, billionaire, CEO, and Alexis's father. Everyone froze. The same manager who mocked Alexis turned pale. Blake tried to vanish into the background, but it was too late.
"Good morning,"
Marcus said.
"I believe my daughter came here yesterday. You remember her?"
The manager stammered, tried to explain, but Marcus shut him down.
"You judged her. You humiliated her. And you taught every employee here what it means to be blind to dignity."
Then it got even crazier. Marcus pulled out a legal document.
"This is a cease and desist. You recorded my daughter. You embarrassed her. And you will be held accountable."
He turned to the owner.
"And your dealership? You're now the first to sponsor a nationwide anti-bias training initiative called Judge by Character. And it starts now."
You think it ends there? Not even close. Marcus didn't just want justice. He wanted change. He signed both Blake and Richard Mason, the owner, up for 2 weeks of mandatory community service at his foundation's charity center. Fast forward, Blake Thompson, Mr. Luxury Salesman, is standing in a kids' center filled with underprivileged children, arms crossed, fuming.
"I don't belong here,"
he grumbles. The center director, Linda, greeted him with a smile. "Hi, Mr. Thompson. We're glad you're here. The kids could use a hand." "I'm not a babysitter,"
Blake scoffed. But Linda wasn't fazed.
"You're here to learn, not just to serve."
Blake sat in a corner, angry, embarrassed, still holding on to his pride. Until a little boy named Thomas walked up, 8 years old. Big smile.
"Hi, I'm Thomas. What's your name, sir?"
"Blake."
"Blake."
"Thomas."
"Are you here to help us?"
"Blake."
"Not really. I'm here because I have to be."
But Thomas didn't flinch.
"I think you'll like it. We all do. You'll see."
And just like that, the walls around Blake's heart started to crack. By day 3, something changed. Blake noticed Thomas quietly repairing a broken backpack with duct tape.
"Why don't you get a new one?"
Blake asked. Thomas smiled.
"It was a gift from my mom. Before she passed. I want to keep it forever."
Blake's throat tightened. This kid had nothing but more heart than most millionaires Blake had ever met. Over the next week, Blake began showing up early. He helped the kids with homework. He served meals. He laughed. He listened. And when the 2 weeks ended, Blake didn't want to leave. That little girl he mocked, she changed his life. Not with money, not with power, but with dignity. This wasn't just a punishment. It was a wake-up call. Because Alexis Carter didn't just walk out of that dealership. She walked into history.
Yet softer than Blake remembered, perhaps changed by time, or perhaps by forgiveness not yet spoken. As she moved through the room, guests turned to admire her poise, unaware of the deeper story silently threading through the gala. Blake stood rooted, his thoughts racing, heart pounding with a cocktail of fear, regret, and the fragile hope of redemption. He had rehearsed what he might say 100 times, but now, as Alexis Carter came closer, words deserted him. She noticed him. Their eyes met. For a moment, the sounds of clinking glasses, hushed conversations, and orchestral strings fell away. Alexis stopped just a few feet from him, her gaze calm, unreadable. Blake cleared his throat, nervous but steady.
"Alexis,"
he began, voice low.
I just want to say thank you. Not just for reading my message, but for teaching me a lesson I didn't even know I needed."
Alexis tilted her head slightly.
"And what lesson was that?"
Blake looked down briefly, gathering courage, then met her eyes again.
"That respect isn't earned by the car you sell or the suit you wear. It's in how you treat people, especially those the world too often ignores. I failed that, but I'm trying every day since.
There was a long pause. Then Alexis's expression softened, just slightly.
Trying matters,
She said.
but only if it leads to change.
Blake nodded.
It has. And it will.
Her lips curled into a subtle smile. Not quite forgiveness, but not rejection either. A beginning.
Then maybe you should sit with the children tonight. I hear Thomas saved you a seat.
Blake chuckled softly, emotion swelling in his chest.
I'd like that.
And as he turned toward the corner table where the kids from the Carter Foundation were waving excitedly at him, Blake Thompson realized that in losing what he thought mattered most, he had finally found what truly did. Not wealth, not power, but a second chance. And that, for the first time, was enough. Message ringing in everyone's ears, a quiet shift stirred in the atmosphere, not just in the grand hall, but in the hearts of those who had listened. The clinking of glasses resumed, conversations restarted, and the evening's soft jazz music flowed once more. But nothing was quite the same. Because beneath the glittering chandeliers and opulent gowns, something rare and precious had taken place. Truth had been spoken without bitterness, and transformation had begun without force. As the guests slowly began to disperse, Alexis Carter stood at a distance, watching her father move through the crowd with quiet grace. Her eyes then found Blake again, not with disdain or anger, but with a quiet recognition. The girl who had once been dismissed and humiliated had not only retained her dignity, but had become the catalyst for the change of a man, a business, and perhaps one day, an industry. Blake, standing beside Richard, felt the weight of responsibility settle on him, not as a burden, but as a second chance. Not one to impress with luxury, but to inspire through character. He had come to the gala a man looking to redeem himself, but was leaving someone reborn, with eyes open not to price tags and tailored suits, but to people. And Richard, still quietly shaken, knew that wealth meant nothing without the integrity to wield it with respect. Outside the hotel, the city lights twinkled like stars come down to earth, and a sleek black car waited at the curb. Marcus Carter stepped in beside Alexis, the car slowly rolling away into the night. He said nothing, only glanced at his daughter with a proud smile. Alexis looked out the window, not at the towering skyline or the velvet dark sky, but at the crowd emerging from the gala, searching for something. And then, just before the car turned the corner, she saw Blake one last time, standing beneath the hotel's golden lights, no longer wearing arrogance, but humility. That night, Boston Luxury Motors lost a fortune, but gained something infinitely greater, a soul. And from that loss, a legacy was born. Blake Thompson knew his life would never be the same again. In the days following the gala, he returned to Boston Luxury Motors with a transformed mindset, not as the arrogant, prejudiced sales manager he once was, but as a man deeply aware of his true worth and the value of those around him. With strong support from Richard Mason, Blake took on the role of coordinator for the dealership's anti-discrimination training program and employee education. At first, many employees were skeptical or reluctant, but seeing Blake, the very man who had once embodied arrogance and bias, now leading the charge for awareness, slowly convinced them that this change was genuine and profound. Blake openly shared his personal story, admitting past mistakes and emphasizing that true change must arise from a heartfelt understanding of compassion and equality, not just from superficial training. Beyond his work at the dealership, Blake continued volunteering regularly at the Carter Foundation, the place that had reshaped his life and perspective. He grew especially close to Thomas, a poor yet optimistic boy whose sincerity and warmth gradually melted away Blake's old pride, making him more humble and authentic than ever before. One afternoon, after a training session, Blake visited the center, bringing a new backpack for Thomas. Handing it to the boy with a warm smile, Blake said,
I know you love your old backpack, but I think your mom would be really happy to see you with a new one for school.
Thomas's eyes lit up as he hugged Blake tightly, whispering,
Thank you, Uncle Blake. But whether it's the new backpack or the old one, I know my mom is really happy that I have such a good friend like you.
In that moment, Blake's heart was deeply moved. He realized his greatest joy wasn't money or status, but the genuine affection from a boy who had unwittingly become his greatest teacher. Richard Mason soon noticed a remarkable change at the dealership. Discriminatory attitudes vanished, replaced by enthusiasm and respect for every customer. This not only enhanced the dealership's image, but also created a positive workplace full of trust and mutual respect. One day, as Blake was leaving work, he encountered Marcus Carter standing silently outside the showroom. Marcus's eyes held quiet thoughtfulness as he spoke softly.
Blake, I came to see the change everyone's been talking about.
Blake smiled humbly.
It's thanks to the lesson you gave me, the opportunity to learn. I wouldn't say I'm completely changed, but I know who I want to become.
Marcus nodded with respect and encouragement.
I believe in your change, Blake. Never forget, our true value is measured by how we treat others when no one important is watching.
Those words settled deeply in Blake's heart. Over time, he lived with kindness and humility, becoming a trusted mentor to Thomas and the other children. His transformation inspired everyone, turning Boston Luxury Motors from a place once steeped in prejudice into a welcoming space of genuine respect. On a golden afternoon, Blake stood on the dealership balcony, watching a diverse crowd bustling through the showroom. At that moment, peace filled him. From afar, Thomas ran up, waving with a bright, shining smile. Blake waved back, his heart overflowing with simple yet profound happiness. Blake Thompson's journey, from a man ruled by discrimination and arrogance to one filled with inspiration, humility, and humanity, became a powerful lesson. Never judge a person's worth by their appearance, background, or skin color. True wealth and success lie in humility, compassion, and how we treat each other when we think no one important is watching. Everyone has the chance to make amends. What matters most is learning and growing from our mistakes. Blake had found the true meaning of life, a meaning that would guide him forever on his journey of kindness and goodness. Sometimes, we judge others based on appearance or skin color, unaware that true worth lies in how one treats those around them. Blake's story shows the incredible power of humility, compassion, and growth. What about you? Have you ever judged someone by their appearance? Share your story or thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful and inspiring, please like the video, share it to spread this positive message, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next touching, insightful stories. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the next story.